Welcome to Stories from the Center of the Universe, the podcast about the human experience.
Matt Williams, welcome to the Center of the Universe. I really appreciate you joining me.
Hey, great to be here. Thank you.
I guess we should mention we connected through Boomer Muth.
Yes.
Boomer, I don't remember what episode he was, but he was probably around 90, something like that, a while ago. And I think you listened to his episode and you enjoyed it.
I did. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, we called it intentionality.
Yes.
I think we've gone away from the theme-based naming, and we're now just, hey, here's the person's name. And
Yeah, I think it was an aptly named episode. Boomer is the most intentional person I've ever known, I think.
Yeah, he's unusually disciplined about it.
Yeah, I've never known him to do anything without a very good reason.
Yeah, I haven't either. I've known him for 3 years.
Yeah.
And you and Boomer are in a band together.
We are. Yeah, we're in a band called Acoustic Underground. I play bass and Boomer sings and plays guitar.
Tell me about the band. How'd you guys get together?
So we, Boomer and I are members of a group called YPO, which is the Young Presidents Organization. And it's a global organization of people who become presidents or CEOs of companies at 45 years old or younger.
So I could not have joined.
No, they had to grandfather me in. I had just turned 46 when I joined, actually.
Oh, wow.
And he and I met through that organization. We're both members of it and got to know each other, got to be friends. And we kind of, through conversations, realized that both of us were into music and had played instruments in bands. And at one point he said, hey, I'm getting some guys together. You want to come play? And I said, sure.
So he was already putting the band together.
He was already putting it together. And, as often happens, they didn't have a bass player because bass players are hard to find.
Why is that? Because everybody wants to play guitar?
I think because everybody wants to play guitar, and that's what happened to me. I played guitar for 30 years and took up the bass to fill a spot in another band, and kind of fell in love with it. And I'm still not that good at it. But I told Boomer, I was like, "You're going to need a real bass player at some point, but I'll play tonight." And I went over and we kind of hit it off with the rest of the guys and just kept playing. And we've been together for a little over a year. It's really fun.
So here's a fun question. My daughter loves playing guitar. She has, I think, 3 guitars upstairs and a bass guitar.
Yeah.
What's the difference between the bass and a typical acoustic guitar, other than the bass typically has 4 strings and the acoustic typically has 6?
Yes, 4 strings, 4 or 5, depending on the kind of bass you have, versus a 6-string or a 12-string acoustic guitar. But a guitarist would pick up a bass and say, oh, this is just like playing guitar. And you can spot those players a mile away. In fact, the first time I played bass, I sat in with a band, and about 2 songs in, the guitar player looked at me and said, you play bass like a guitarist, which is the worst insult anybody can give a bass player, because the technique and the way you play the instrument is completely different. So the way a bass works is that you deconstruct chords, and any bass note that's being played at any given time is usually one of the notes that makes up the chord that it's played underneath.
Okay.
So there's a hell of a lot of theory you have to know. You have to be able to pull chords apart and understand, fourths and fifths and sixths and when they fit together. And it's been a steep learning curve for me. It's really, really fun.
Steeper than guitar?
Actually, yeah, because I found myself really good very quickly at rhythm guitar, which is basically, learn some chords and bash your way through. And I got really good at that.
Yeah.
And bass is much more precise for me. And requires more knowledge of the instrument, more knowledge of the fretboard. I can play a song on a guitar if I know 4 or 5 chords. Mm. You got to play 100 notes for any song on the bass.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It's so much more demanding, I find.
I had no idea. How long have you been playing bass?
Probably 10 years.
Okay.
Seriously, for probably 3.
And I imagine you're pretty good at it.
I'm still not as good at the bass as I ever was at guitar. I'm just now trying to figure it out and really loving it.
I love listening to music. I've never played an instrument unless you include the tuba when I was in 7th grade, kind of thing. And I didn't know that about the bass versus a typical guitar.
And I honestly didn't know it until I picked it up.
Wow.
And really started to learn it and realized, wow, there's a lot more to this than I realized.
And you really enjoy it because you stuck with it.
I really love it. Yeah, it's fun.
What kind of music does your band play?
We're playing, and we play some originals, but mostly covers. So It's acoustic-y, harmony-driven, because our singers are really, really good. Boomer's one of the singers, and there are a couple other guys who sing.
Don's the other one, right?
Don Busick, yep. Winston Price on the drums, and Phil Hatfield on keys, and then me.
Phil Hatfield sounds like a guy who would play keyboard.
Yes. He actually plays in 2 bands. He's cheating on us.
He sounds like he's pretty good at it.
He is pretty good. It's really fun. They're great musicians, really good guys, but the harmonies are especially precise, and that's one of our things.
How many gigs a month do you guys play?
We try to play once a month. We try to keep it to once a month.
And just because you guys are busy and doing other things?
Yeah, everybody's got families, everybody's got jobs, but we love doing it and we want to keep doing it. We just want to try to keep it to a dull roar.
It's a pretty cool hobby.
It's a blast, man. There's nothing more fun than playing music with a bunch of guys and realizing you're kind of all in that groove together, and it carries you away, and you look out and people are having fun and they're dancing and they're singing along, and I mean it's a kick.
Yeah.
It's a really cool feeling.
Are you guys on an elevated stage, or do you tend to be?
It
with
depends. We've done it all different ways. Yeah, it depends on the venue.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, so you were telling me before today that you grew up in Delaware.
I was born in Wilmington, Delaware.
I don't think I've ever met anybody from Delaware.
So it's like we said. Everybody says, I was in Delaware once. I drove through it on the way to the beach. That's exactly right. That's where I lived.
It's the second. It's the first state.
First state to ratify the Constitution. So
Right.
yes, it is the first state.
And it's the second smallest by acreage, or I don't know how to say that. by geography.
Second to Rhode Island. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what's its claim to fame besides being the first to ratify the Constitution?
Let's see. Almost every company in America is incorporated in Delaware.
They have some fun laws.
They have
in Delaware.
fun corporation and corporate governance laws. Yeah. So all of a sudden, everybody's incorporated in Delaware.
Delaware and South Dakota.
South Dakota too.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. A lot of banks in South Dakota.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no
that's
doubt.
true.
So, what are your fondest memories of growing up in Delaware?
Delaware was it was really fun. I lived in Wilmington, which is it's about 30 miles, I guess, or 30 miles outside of Philadelphia. So we were in the Philadelphia DMA. So we got all our TV from Philadelphia and all that. So I remember growing up and watching the Eagles and watching the Phillies, and there was a product called Phillies Franks that were hot dogs that were sold in and around the Philadelphia area. And back in the 70s and 80s, on the back of the package of Phillies Franks, they had a coupon for a free ticket to a Phillies game. So the idea was me and all my friends from high school would buy big packages of Phillies Franks, one package to each kid. So there's 12
That's 12.
Franks.
Yeah,
right?
that's a lot of Franks.
But you only get one coupon for a ticket, right? So you got 12 Franks for each kid. Everybody piles into the car with their Phillies Franks and their free ticket, and you go up and you have the biggest tailgate ever at Vet Stadium, and then you go to a Phillies game.
This is
blast.
This is late 70s?
Early
80s?
Early mid 80s.
Okay.
Yeah, I graduated from high school in 85, so early 80s.
Okay. They were not very good back then?
There were times when they were good. Tug McGraw was pitching.
Yeah,
and
Tug was great.
Steve Carlton, and they had some firepower occasionally.
Mike Schmidt.
Schmidt.
Schmidt was
Mike
probably
Schmidt.
the best third baseman for a decade easily.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Yeah. That's
it was
cool.
fun.
That's
It
a lot
was
of cool.
fun.
How did you travel to the stadium back then?
You take a car.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were driving by then?
We were driving by.
Okay, got it. You never went as a pre-16-year-old?
Nah, not really. Not really. I spent a couple of years in Cincinnati, and I would go to the games in Cincinnati.
That's a fun ballpark.
It was Riverfront Stadium at the time,
Yeah.
so it was a long time ago, and this was in the mid '70s. So this was when the Big Red Machine was winning.
They were
everything they
amazing.
looked at, right?
Yeah.
And I can still name the starting 9 of the Big Red
Do it.
Machine.
Let's do it.
All right, you ready?
Yep.
Johnny Bench, Tony Perez, Joe Morgan, Dave Concepcion, Pete Rose, George Foster, Cesar Geronimo, and Ken Griffey.
And you went from catcher to first to third, left to right.
Left to right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were the best team in the mid 70s.
They were unbelievable. It was so much fun to watch them play. So back then, to see the game, you would just get, $5 from your parents and get on a bus and go down to Riverfront Stadium with your buddies when you were like 10 years old.
It was
cool.
They were almost an all-star team by themselves.
Yeah, they were unbelievable.
Yeah, Johnny Bench in particular was a fantastic catcher.
He was a monster. Yeah,
He could do everything.
he could do everything. They were great.
Yeah, that's awesome. You were lucky.
Yeah,
You were lucky to be able to
fun.
see them.
Yeah, if you're a baseball fan, that was a pretty great place to live.
I mean, I can't think of a better time and place to live in baseball lore. I'm not saying, and I actually have a pretty deep-rooted, I won't say hatred because that's a strong word, but I didn't like the Reds for a couple reasons. One, they were very, very good, and my team is not in their division anymore, but they were. The Astros were in their division back in the day. And Cincinnati would kill them all the time.
It was so much fun. We used to me and a couple of my friends on the block would go up into one of our bedrooms and write fan letters to the Reds players. And this was back in the time when you would actually get responses.
Really?
So I would collect these handwritten responses from these players. I had a bunch of them. Do
you still have them?
No, I wish I did.
What happened to them?
I don't know. I think I stuck them in a box somewhere, and they just got lost.
That's crazy
somewhere
how
in the
that
shuffle
happens.
when I moved back to Wilmington.
Did you get one from Johnny Bench?
I did get one from Johnny Bench, and I got one from Dave Concepcion. I remember getting the Dave Concepcion one. It was just an envelope with my address on it, and there was nothing in the envelope except a picture of him from the Reds yearbook that was ripped out by hand and signed with a ballpoint pen. It was like, that is so cool.
Did he not have other pictures of himself in other forms?
No, I've got this picture in my head of him sitting in the locker room with a couple of fan letters that have come in that week that somebody from the office brought in, and he's got a yearbook, and he's just ripping it out, signing it, and handing it to somebody, and they stuck it in an envelope and sent it back to me.
I wonder how many yearbooks they had. He may have gone through a few.
I don't know. Yeah, Concepcion was great. I mean, it was cool.
So most of your childhood was in Wilmington.
Yes, I spent 4 years living in Cincinnati.
Okay. And what ages were you in Cincinnati?
First grade to fifth grade.
Okay, so you have good memories of
I love
living in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you go back to Cincinnati ever? Any reason to go back?
I haven't been back in probably 40 years.
Yeah, I used to go to that part of the world pretty regularly, and it's kind of a foodie scene in part of their downtown now. They've got some fantastic mom and pop kind of restaurants.
Oh yeah,
in Cincinnati.
I've heard that it's a really cool town.
Yeah, it is. It's a very cool town.
Yeah,
and they've redone a lot along the river there.
Yeah. I've never been back.
All right, so when you were in like middle school, how were you spending your time?
Middle school. Wow. Probably just staring at girls and
puberty was a thing back then.
Puberty was a thing back then. Yeah, that was middle school. Staring at girls and wondering like how much more gawky can I get? Because I was like 6'3" and weighed about 120 pounds.
In middle school.
Yeah, I got really tall really fast.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What did you grow, like a foot in a year?
Oh man, yeah. Stretch marks galore.
Oh my
gosh. Not pretty. Not pretty.
It's better to be tall than short, I would argue.
I think so. But if you get that tall that quickly, it's very strange.
You stand out.
Oh man, you're in the back row middle of every class picture, and like it's head, and then bam, who's this cornstalk in the back row? That was me.
Did you play basketball?
No.
You probably get that question all the time.
Me
yeah, sorry for that.
And I was terrible at basketball. I played baseball and soccer, and I was a lousy basketball player. I just never got it.
Were you good at soccer and baseball?
I was okay at soccer. I was better at baseball.
Really?
Yeah, I was a good pitcher.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you overpowering people as a pitcher?
No, I didn't have a lot of speed, but believe it or not, I had a really good knuckleball.
Oh, knuckleball's fun to pitch.
I developed a knuckleball when I was in high school because I couldn't overpower anybody. And my curveball was weak at best. So I started playing around with a changeup, and then somebody said, let me show you how to throw a knuckleball.
Do something weird with your fingers,
And I figured it out, and my catcher hated my guts, but I could throw a knuckleball.
So I caught when I was a teenager, and I caught this kid who was a knuckleballer for 6 innings, and it was the most tiring 6 innings of my life.
Nightmare. Yeah, you're just covered in bruises.
It's in the dirt like 2/3
right,
of every.
It's awful.
Yeah, it's
awful.
But as the pitcher, it's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's really fun because it's so frustrating to a batter. It's just perplexing. And
you're not even sure. You're not even sure where the ball's going to go.
No,
right?
no, it could go anywhere. It could go anywhere. But when you reel off a good one, and you can just watch the seams go toward home plate because it's not moving.
Yeah, it's
awesome.
And something in the air is going to catch it, and it's going to move it.
It's going to drop, or it's going to wiggle. Who knows what it'll do?
Even if it just wiggles a little bit, it's off-putting for the batter.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, did you have a variation of the pitch, or did you grab it the same way and throw it the same way every time?
No, I grabbed it the same way almost every time.
Okay.
Yeah. I put my fingers on either side of the seams, on the narrow end of the seams, and dug my fingernails in.
Yeah.
And bam.
And it works.
It works.
It's amazing there aren't more knuckleballers in the major leagues.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I don't know. I always thought it was kind of like the last refuge of a scoundrel. When you're not a really good pitcher, if you can develop a knuckleball, maybe you can get a few more years out of it.
You thought of yourself as a scoundrel? Or?
Totally. Well, because I didn't have enough power, and my curveball didn't move enough.
Could you put your fastball or your changeup or your curveball essentially where you wanted it in the strike
Really
zone?
good control.
Okay.
But as soon as batters figured me out, they just roped me.
It didn't matter where you put it. Yeah.
No, because I couldn't overpower them.
All right. Right on. Did you play baseball later in life or?
Just through high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever convert to softball at any point?
No.
I did, and I questioned it, and then I ended up having a blast playing softball.
Yeah. It might be because like I was an okay hitter, not strong enough to be a power hitter. I was a contact hitter.
Right.
And I think you can get away with that in regular baseball. And softball, it's not as fun.
No, it's not.
And I was
fun.
a pitcher, and I didn't really want to pitch softball.
Slow pitch, underhand. It's
right.
very, very different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you love school when you were younger?
Did I love school?
Did you love the academics in school, I should say?
You know, I liked the academics at school only because they were easy. So I was one of those guys who was lucky enough to be able to get through school without working very hard. And I got pretty good grades because it came fairly easily through high school. And then I got into a good college and just got my butt kicked.
You weren't prepared.
Oh, no. And I thought I could just ease my way through it the way I did high school.
It happens to a lot of kids.
Oh, man. I didn't figure it out till my senior year. And by then it's too late for your GPA. You're already snowed under.
Yeah, well, and you went to a pretty tough school to get into one, but I think it's even harder to get through it.
I think that's true. I went to William and Mary, and I loved it. Had a great time, played in a band, joined the fraternity, did the whole college thing, and had a blast. But my academic record was awful because I tried to, kind of squeak my way through school, and you can't do it at that place.
Not at William and Mary. I mean, a lot of kids, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of kids go there and they know the deal. They know they are academics basically 24/7.
Yeah.
And if you're in a band or you've got other extracurricular things going on in your life, it's going to be tough.
Well, especially now. And this was in the late 80s, and it was hard then, but now I wouldn't have a prayer. I would have washed out really fast. It's much harder now than it was then.
How did you know about William and Mary from Delaware?
We had a college counselor in my school that put it on the list, and I looked into it, and it felt like what a school should look like to me.
Right.
It looked like that's what college should look like. And I went and visited, and I thought I wanted to study government, and it has a really good government program.
Oh, it's fantastic.
So I ended up there. I got in off the wait list, so I didn't think I was going to go to William & Mary. I actually had already kind of had a roommate and was ready to go to Wake Forest.
Oh, wow.
And then on prom weekend, in my senior year, I was at the beach with my girlfriend who had chosen William and Mary as her first choice and not gotten in. And the phone rang, and it was my parents saying, "We just got your letter from William and Mary. You got in." And I was all excited, and then I realized, oh, this is not good. It was a very awkward moment.
But she eventually found out.
She found out right then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you couldn't get
I didn't handle it well.
But you're a senior in high school.
I can't pretend to have handled it well. Yeah.
How did she take it?
Not great.
Yeah.
And we're not together anymore.
Yeah.
So it's okay. It worked out for both of us.
Yeah. No, let me ask this. How many siblings do you have?
I have a younger sister.
I have a younger sister, no other siblings.
Yeah.
Are you close in age?
3 years. She's 3 years younger than me.
I have a sister 3 years younger than me.
Wow, look at that.
It's really weird. And we're both tall.
Yeah, she's tall too.
Yeah. Weird.
Maybe our sisters are the same person.
I can't imagine they are. Yeah. Did you enjoy growing up with your sister?
Yeah, we were never really close growing up. We kind of just did our own things, and we were far enough apart in age that we were never really having the same experiences at the same time.
Right.
And your little sister, when you're 10 years old or 15 years old, you don't want to hang out with your little sister. You don't have anything in common. You don't have anything to talk about. She's just a big pain in the butt.
Right.
So we got closer after we both got out of college, and we were having the same experiences. We were adults. The age difference didn't matter very much, and she's really cool.
The brain fully forms in the early to mid 20s.
Yeah.
For men, closer to mid 20s. For young ladies, closer to early 20s. But yeah, it's amazing what can happen and how relationships gravitate to a mature place when the brain is fully
Well,
formed.
exactly. And then your fully formed brain meets this person and you think, wow, she's pretty cool. We should have hung out a little more.
Yeah, that's awesome. Where does she live in Delaware?
She lives in California.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, she lives in Orange County, California.
She's in
with
SoCal.
her husband. Yeah.
It's been a weird ride there, I imagine, but we don't need to get into that.
Yeah, she goes back and forth. She and her husband and her family have a place in Sun Valley, Idaho that they go back and forth to, which is pretty great.
I can imagine that's
beautiful.
awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah.
All right, so you go to William & Mary, and at what point did you figure out what you were going to major in?
At the point where my dad sat me down and said, your 1.6 grade point average is not going to cut it, and this English major will not get you a job. You need to major in business.
and you were thankful
So,
your dad had that
he
conversation.
was right. He was absolutely right. Not because I should be a business major to get a job. You should be able to major in whatever you want and still get a job, which I think is true. But I needed to go into a more practical field because my thought was I want to go to law school. Right? I thought I wanted to go to law school, but my grade point average was so lousy. There was no way I was getting into law school. And he sat me down one day. This was a summer after my sophomore year, and I had a 1.6 grade point average. So I was on academic probation, all kinds of problems. And he said, you know what your problem is? I said, what? He said, you're majoring in band and fraternity. You have a double major
He
in
wasn't wrong.
band and fraternity. I was like, you're probably right. And he said, you need to get your act together. You're going to be a business major. You're going to go into the business school. You're going to go back to summer school and get the credits you need to get into the business school. And if you don't, I'm not going to pay for your education anymore.
Yeah, good
I
for
was like,
him.
you know what? He was right.
Oh, he's absolutely right.
So I did, and it worked out okay. And I became a marketing major because I liked the idea of combining creativity with business problem solving because both those things were interesting to me. And marketing seemed like the way to do that. It seemed like that's where you could really kind of let your brain run free, but not disconnected from the realities of business. And I really like that.
Yeah, business is quite pragmatic.
Yeah.
In the end, but you need creativity to do better than the competition or
Yeah.
to succeed in the marketplace.
Yeah, and I don't have a formulaic brain the way I think you need to have to be an accountant or to be a finance major or something like that. I don't have that kind of. I don't have the structure in my brain for that. And marketing seemed to fit really well, and I loved it. And I was pretty good at it. It came fairly naturally to me. It just made sense.
So at a high level, it's solving business problems creatively. One layer deeper, for the casual listener, how would you describe marketing?
Marketing is simply the art of finding and retaining customers. That's all you're doing. So you're inventing products. You're creating ways to promote those products. The 4 Ps are promotion, product, pricing, and placement. So distribute those products, create the products, promote those products or services, and create a relationship with those customers that lasts and is profitable.
I love how succinct you just were there. Find and maintain customers.
Find and create profitable customers.
Yeah.
That's your job.
And you loved it.
I do. It's fun. It's fun. I loved especially the advertising side of the business because I worked in advertising agencies for 30 years. And the cool thing about that is you're surrounding yourself with people who get paid and make a career to think in ways other people don't think and to see things in ways other people don't see them and to solve problems with ways of thinking that are just bizarre, but they work. And that's really fun. That's a very dynamic and interesting environment to be in.
When did you know you were going to be a marketing guy? I
did an internship in my dad's company where he was the director of marketing for DuPont. Big multi-global industrial company.
Huge.
And yeah, literally hundreds of thousands of employees. And he brought me into his department to do an internship because he knew I was interested in marketing. And I got there and it was really helpful and I learned a lot, but the corporate environment didn't feel like the place I wanted to spend my career. But these advertising agency people seemed like they were having a really good time. They were fun. They were joking it up. They weren't wearing suits. It was like that. These are the guys I want to hang out with. This is cool. So I ended up getting introduced to a couple of people from the agency side through my dad's job at DuPont. And I know that they talked to me as a favor to him. It was nepotism through and through. I knew it was. But
I love how you admitted that.
Oh,
because
totally.
Most people who benefit from nepotism never admit it.
No, it was. It was connections. It was nepotism. And my dad was the client. So he calls the agency and he says, hey, would you talk to my son about advertising? Of course the answer is yes. So they do. And one thing led to another. And I got a job offer from one of those companies and ended up going to work in Philadelphia after I graduated from William and Mary at an ad agency that doesn't exist anymore called Ketchum Advertising.
What was your job right out of college?
I was an assistant account executive.
What does that mean?
Assistant account executives, basically you're doing proofreading. So I'm proofreading direct mail packages, you know. So like I have nightmares about this.
I was going to say.
You know how you proofread for spelling? You read words back. You read sentences backwards. So the meaning, they lose all their meaning, and you're only reading individual words. Yeah.
And so you can still, you know what the word is even though you're reading it backwards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. And you're sitting across a desk from somebody just like I am with you. They have a copy of it and I have a copy of it, and there's a reader and somebody who's marking, and you just read it and the other person marks up the what was called then the mechanical, which is the thing you're printing.
This is before spell check.
It's before computers, man. We didn't have computers on the desks.
And you were doing this 8 hours a day?
No, that was only part of my job. The other part was like billing and invoices.
All the stuff nobody else wanted to do.
Exactly. This is total bottom of the totem pole kind of stuff, you know. But you're in an ad agency and you feel like a little junior madman, and that was kind of cool. But I loved it. I learned how to think creatively about things. I worked on some interesting projects for, you know, weird brands like Certainteed Insulation and Showboat Casinos and Chemlong Lawn Care.
Everything.
Like these super obscure kind of brands. But the everything part of it was what made it so fun. And I think that's what happens with advertising people is they get addicted to the variety of it. And, you know, one minute you're going to be in a meeting talking about, you know, business to business industrial coatings, and then the next minute you're going to be in a meeting with somebody who makes cookies, and the minute after that you're going to be in a meeting with somebody who sells toothpaste. You know, so you learn a ton about lots of different businesses, and you get really good at learning transferable things across those businesses. So you can look at a situation and say, you know, I think I've seen this before. I saw it over here in the industrial coatings category, and here's how it worked.
Yeah.
And I can apply that to packaged goods.
I imagine most of it is transferable.
I think it is, and it makes you good at lateral thinking. It makes you good at connecting things that seem disconnected.
Yeah, the casual person would say the Showboat Casino and some industrial company.
Yeah.
What do they have in common?
What do they have? And they have a lot, you know, a lot, actually.
Who was your favorite client back then?
My favorite client back then in Philadelphia, the one I spent the most time on was Certainteed Insulation.
So you know a lot about insulation?
I know about R values. I know a lot about insulation.
It stayed with you.
Oh, you never forget this kind of stuff. Yeah. My client was crazy. And I won't say his name, but he was the kind of guy that when the phone rang and you heard him on the other end, like the shiver would come down your spine because he was just going to chew your face off about something. Could be anything.
He just needed anything to complain about.
He was just kind of an angry guy.
Yeah.
And here I am, you know, 22 years old and getting my face chewed off by this 50-year-old guy who sits in a big office, you know, scaring the pants off me. Like, yeah, it was wild. He was a piece of work.
How long did you have to endure that?
About 2 years.
It's a long time.
It's a long time. It's a long time, but it makes you resilient. It makes you realize that in hindsight that, man, you don't have to be that way. Nothing's that important.
So Philly led to Richmond with a job move? Is that what happened?
Yeah. So one of my very, very best friends, who to this day is still one of my best friends. In fact, I'm flying out to Seattle to see him in 2 weeks, worked with me at Ketchum. Okay. We were both junior account executives, and he left to go get a job at this agency I'd never heard of in Richmond, Virginia, called the Martin Agency. And he came down to Richmond, and about 6 months later, he called me and he was like, hey, you know, this place is really cool. You should come down. I'm going to get an interview for you, and you can just come down, do the interview on a Friday, and hang out with me on the weekend. And I thought, yeah, okay, I'm single. I got nothing to lose. And, you know, things aren't going great at this agency that no longer exists up in Philadelphia, and people kind of knew it wasn't going great. So I thought, well, I'll try my luck down in Richmond.
Were you a single man at the time?
Yeah. So I just loaded up a U-Haul, and me and my roommate drove down. He followed me in his car, helped me move in, and he drove back up to Philadelphia and left me in Richmond. And I figured, I'll stay here working at this agency for a couple of years and figure out what I want to do with my life and then go do it. Because this seemed like a good thing to do at the time.
Back then, not a lot of people were thinking, hey, I'll move to Richmond and stay there the rest of my life.
No, and I had never really been to Richmond. For as much time as I spent in Williamsburg, I think I came to Richmond maybe twice in the course of those 4 years. Both times to see a concert.
I was going to say it had to be music. Yeah.
It was music. So one time I came up to see Billy Bragg at a club called Rockets.
Yep.
And then the other time I came up to the Richmond Coliseum to see Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
Fantastic band, horrible acoustics.
Horrible. The Richmond Coliseum is the worst place in the world for music.
Yeah, I don't know why anybody would ever play there.
I don't know. I'm sure David Crosby was not pleased.
As well as Stills and Nash.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So those were the only times I was in Richmond. But I came up here and got an apartment down in Shockoe Bottom and kind of,
You went straight to the heart.
I went straight downtown.
What were your impressions of Richmond before you ever really spent time there? Obviously, going to a couple concerts, you've been to Richmond, but you didn't really understand the place. What did you think it was going to be?
So, coming from Philadelphia, I knew it was a smaller city because I lived right in Center City, and I didn't have a car. I walked everywhere. I loved it. So, I was a little trepidatious about coming to Richmond, small town. It felt like small town.
And the South,
which the South didn't bother me so much, but I didn't realize just how openly Confederate Richmond was in 1991.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just around you.
Weirdly and horribly.
Yeah, it was just around you. And it added to the sense of culture shock that you get anytime you move from one city to another. And I felt it more so, I think, because of that, coming from Philadelphia to there, to Richmond. But I had a great time, and I was 2 blocks away from the Flood Zone, and the Flood Zone had lots of great music coming through all the time. And
3 floors of it, right?
Amazing. It was a great venue, and Dave Matthews Band was the house band.
Yeah.
They hadn't broken gigantic yet, so
they were out of Charlottesville, come to Richmond all the time.
Yeah, play once a week down there.
Yeah.
Monday nights or Tuesday nights, I forget which, but you just go down to the Flood Zone, catch Dave Matthews with 20 other people.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Boyd Tinsley on the fiddle, right?
Yeah. They were great.
Yeah, Boyd and Dave, both from Charlottesville. I mean, Dave, I guess, grew up in South Africa, but they both lived in Charlottesville for a really long time.
Right. So, that was pretty cool. And then there were awesome bands going through there. And I was lucky because my best friend from junior high school and high school actually lived in Richmond. Mm. So I had somebody to kind of, latch onto when I got to town. So I didn't come here not knowing anybody. I had a good friend here, and I was able to kind of get to know his friends and hang out with them. So I had a kind of a built-in crew when I got here, which was nice.
Yeah,
made it easier.
Yeah, it's a lot easier having somebody that can show you around and tell you what's good and maybe not so good about the town.
Exactly.
You brought up the whole Confederate notion, and you had lived in Williamsburg for 4 years before that, and I think you will agree with this. Williamsburg puts off a very colonial feel.
Oh, yeah.
Super colonial. And you're kind of when you're in college, you're in a bubble.
Yeah, right.
Right. You're not really experiencing a mid-sized town like Richmond is.
No, I mean, you think about Williamsburg and William and Mary, it's like a bubble inside a bubble.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So William and Mary is a bubble inside the bubble of Williamsburg. So I actually liked that about it at the time. I wanted that. And it was really actually kind of cool where I would get stressed out at school and I would just say, I'm going walking down Duke of Gloucester Street.
Well,
and you just walk down Dog Street and you walk back up. It's a mile each way and clear your head and it feels like you've left, the regular world. You're on this colonial planet. And it's a really nice little stress release. It was nice to have it there.
People come from all over to visit that part of the state of Virginia.
Yeah, it's Colonial Williamsburg was a cool place to have right nearby. So
I have taken my kids on spring break to Williamsburg.
Yep, they're doing some amazing stuff down there.
Really?
I have to say right now.
What's going
amazing
on there?
Stuff right now. They have a new president and CEO who's doing a wonderful job of kind of recentering them on their educational mission and is revitalizing some of the programming and the work that they're doing there. And there's amazing archaeological work being done down there. They teamed up with William and Mary and actually found the oldest black school in America in Williamsburg, in Colonial Williamsburg. It's It's right on the edge of the campus of William and Mary in Colonial Williamsburg. It's called the Bray School, and it was hidden inside a building that had literally been built up around it.
What?
Yeah. And the people at Colonial Williamsburg did all this archaeological work and research work and realized we think the Bray School is inside this building.
What year did they just think that?
This was a year ago.
That's
2 years ago.
Unbelievable.
So it was. I hope I get this story mostly right. So it was inside what was the ROTC building for William and Mary, and they had built this building around this old building that was the Bray School, not knowing that that's what this building was. And the archaeologists and the researchers at Colonial Williamsburg suspected this is where the Bray School was, and they went to Catherine Rowe, who's the president of William and Mary, and through their partnership were able to pull some slats off the outside of the ROTC building and reveal the infrastructure of the Bray School. And they had done enough research that they were able to look at what was revealed and say, this confirms that this is the building.
And it was mostly intact, the old school?
Inside the ROTC building, yeah.
That's unbelievable.
It's like a Russian doll building. It's like a building inside a building. It's really cool. And they're now excavating the entire thing. Like brick by brick and board by board, they're taking it apart. It's amazing. Really cool.
Can the public check that out?
Not yet. I don't believe so.
Probably another couple of years, maybe.
Yeah, but it's really wild.
That
really
is
cool.
I've never heard anything like that.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. So Colonial Williamsburg has some really interesting stuff going on right now. If you've been there before, you should go back because you haven't really experienced it yet.
Yeah, the Bray School, that story's incredible.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. And what they found old chimneys inside the wall. They found old stairways within the building that had been covered up by walls, and the stairways are worn. The floorboards of the stairs are worn where the students walked up and down the stairs. I mean, it's really cool.
When do they think the Bray School was erected or constructed?
Oh man, I don't know. I'm not sure what the dates were.
Late 16, early 1700s?
Yeah, it was back in the 17, early 1800s, I think.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it was actually moved. They moved it to the location where they found it, and it's one of the most amazing things that they didn't just tear it down. They actually moved the building.
I was hoping that my date range was more accurate than yours, but it sounds like you know it, which doesn't say much about our history as a country.
I'm making it up now. I'm out of my depth.
No, but you're probably closer than I am. Yeah. All right, so you come to Richmond.
Yeah.
It's a little off-putting, maybe to more than a little off-putting, seeing all the Confederate flags.
It didn't bother me. I mean, and I say it didn't bother me. I'm not proud that it didn't bother me. It should have bothered me more than it did.
Yeah, but I don't know that it bothered.
It just didn't. It didn't register on my 23-year-old brain at the time. Well,
if you were white in Richmond, you probably didn't give it a second thought. If you were not white, it bothered you all the time.
I suspect that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
So yes, it was different, and it put me off, but it didn't put me off so much that I didn't want to stay in Richmond. And so I stayed here. I went to work at Martin, and I just kind of fell in love with the place. I loved the creative vibe of it. I loved that. Not only was it, quote unquote creative the way an advertising agency should be, it was among the most creative agencies in the country. And when you put in all the legwork to do the strategy and do the research and work with the client, when you got the work back, the work was fantastic. The idea was amazing, and it was funny and insightful and brilliantly crafted. And it was like, this is what advertising is supposed to be. And I had no idea, coming from another agency that wasn't creatively as good as Martin, that it was supposed to be like this. And I just got a rush out of being around those kind of ideas and contributing as much as I could to creating those ideas. And I loved the community that had built up at that company. And I just, 26 years later, I hadn't left.
Yeah, I'm as a casual observer of all things, I would, if you said, hey, name 10 cities or even 20 cities that are really good at advertising, Richmond would not be in my top 20.
No, and it's become that now. There's some really terrific ad agencies in Richmond. Not just Martin.
Really?
But
Multiple?
others. Yeah. There's some really good ones here.
Did Martin attract the others, you think?
I think a lot of that happened that way. Martin grew fast and is still, I think, the largest agency in town by a fair margin. But it would attract really talented people And there's a Martin diaspora that kind of comes out from the company, and they start other agencies, and they come from the brand center at VCU now, which is the best graduate advertising program in the country. So
really?
So a lot of people graduate from VCU and stay in Richmond, and startup agencies or startup design shops, and Richmond's become quite the little advertising hub. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're kind of a foodie town now too.
Yeah, look at us getting all cool.
It was not 91. I don't think anybody was saying cool.
91, there was nothing cool about Richmond. It was weird. Yeah,
that's your perspective is fantastic. All right, so you spent 26 years at Martin.
I did.
The last 5 as CEO.
Right.
Working your way from basically entry level, I imagine, when you came to town, up to CEO. What was that journey like?
It was wild. One of the things you realize about advertising is that it affords you the opportunity to have some really wild experiences. And I don't know what it is about advertising that does that. Maybe it's the proximity to the culture. People want to be around it. It attracts interesting people. But, so I was present when the gecko was invented.
Please tell that story.
So, all right. So here's how the gecko was invented, and it feels like something straight out of Mad Men. But we started working with Geico in 1993, I think. So I worked with Geico over 20 years, and in 1995 or so, 96, 2 things happened. One was Geico decided they wanted to go west of the Mississippi, which they'd never done, and the other was there was a Screen Actors Guild strike. So we were making TV commercials, but we couldn't put people in them because all the actors were on strike, right? So we're doing these focus groups in Phoenix with Geico, and it's me and the creative director, who is an artist, and Ted Ward, who's the chief marketing officer at Geico. And the 3 of us.
What was your job at the time?
I was an account executive.
Okay.
So I was like the client guy, the client relationship guy, and the 3 of us are going to these focus groups, and nobody in Phoenix can pronounce the name of the company. Right, Geico or Geeko, or
much less what it stands for.
Right, like Government Employees Insurance Company. Right. So why would I ever entrust my car insurance to this company whose name I can't pronounce? So we leave the focus group, and as you do after every focus group, you go to the bar. So we're sitting in the bar in the hotel in Phoenix, and we're bemoaning the fact that nobody can pronounce the name of our client's company. We're like, what are we going to do, Ted? What are we going to do? So Ted and I are trying to figure out what we're going to do about this, and the creative director is sitting next to me with a napkin in front of him, and he's drawing. And he slides this napkin over to Ted as a joke, and he says, "Hey, Ted, you should do this." And on the napkin is a drawing of a lizard with a speech bubble over his head that says, "I'm a gecko, don't call me Geico." And Ted picks it up and goes, "You know what? Do that," and hands it back to him. And that's how the gecko was invented. So we went back to Richmond and did a bunch of TV spots with an animated gecko telling people that he's not Geico, stop calling him.
Did you have a lot of animation in your advertising back then?
No, we did it because we couldn't hire live actors.
Yeah.
Right? So the SAG strike and the fact that nobody in Phoenix could pronounce Geico is why the gecko was born.
That is a fantastic story.
So there you go.
And I have to ask you, just like the Johnny Bench letter,
yeah,
where's that napkin today?
The napkin is actually framed and hanging on the wall at the Interpublic Group, which is the parent company who owns the Martin Agency.
I'm glad it's well cared for.
Yes.
Yeah. So you were one of 3 people there when that was born.
Yeah. And, we always make a big deal in the advertising business about trying to dispel the myths that this is just, some magical person throwing pencils into the ceiling, having crazy ideas, like John Hamm has it come to him in Mad Men, and all of a sudden he's invented the most famous advertising in the world. No, it's all very strategic, and it's all very, there's lots of research, and we think very hard about this. But not that one. The gecko was just a guy over beers drawn on a napkin.
That was an exception, though. Usually it is a lot of hard work and hard thinking.
Actually. Very much the exception. So it was wild.
The gecko is probably, in the last 20, 25 years, top 3.
It's one of the most recognized brand icons in history. I mean, it's up there with Tony the Tiger and the Pillsbury Doughboy.
When those advertisements came out, this is how impactful the gecko was. My mom asked me if I'd seen the commercials, and I'm like, I don't think so. And then I saw it, and I told her that I'd seen the commercials, and she said, "Isn't that gecko fantastic?"
Isn't he fantastic?
I don't think you knew what a gecko was before these commercials.
He's just fantastic.
Why does he have a foreign accent?
Because it was funny.
What is the accent?
It's Cockney. It's a British Cockney accent, and the guy who voices the gecko is a disc jockey from London.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that we did in a casting call with hundreds of people, and we just thought his voice had character, and he was funny.
So you weren't necessarily going for a Cockney British accent.
No.
But he brought it in.
He brought it. That was him, and he was funny, and he fit the gecko perfectly. And it's animated by a company in LA called Frame Store, who does an amazing job. The next gecko commercial you see, I ask everybody to watch how he moves, how his face moves, how he expresses himself, how his hands move. It's unbelievable how human he is, and it's because the animators have put hundreds and hundreds of hours into modeling the way he moves. It's unbelievable. It's really cool.
Old school way of drawing cartoons. You're doing 8.5 by 11s or whatever the size was. Individual drawings,
cells,
and hundreds, if not thousands, of those to make a 15-20 minute cartoon.
This is all computerized now, but the amount of kind of human anatomy and motion science that goes into animating a character like the gecko as well as they do it, it's astounding.
The gecko's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Does he stick around for another who knows how long?
Man, I don't know. I think so. I don't see him going anywhere. I mean, he's a multi-billion-dollar asset for Geico now.
Yeah.
I don't think Mr. Buffett would ever retire the gecko. He's too smart.
Yeah, and whoever follows Mr. Buffett, I don't think they get rid of the gecko either.
I don't think so.
Yeah. So that leads me to the caveman or cavemen.
Yeah. Yeah, I was in that one too. So the caveman was a simple idea rooted in telling people that Geico.com was easy to work with. So you talk to people about getting insurance on the internet, and back in the day when this happened, everybody was like, I ask you for all this information, and it's scary, and it takes too long. And we said, all right, we have to build Geico a website that's easy to use, and we have to simply tell people that Geico.com is really easy, and you shouldn't be worried about using it. Don't be afraid to use Geico.com. So the creative team who developed the caveman just came in, and it was during one of these meetings where they're presenting 10 different ideas that could deliver on this very simple brief. And one of them was this idea that they were going to invent these two cavemen who were incredibly sophisticated and intelligent, but nobody gave them any credit because they're cavemen.
Right.
And that's the idea. And the whole thing is going to be like, it's so easy a caveman can do it, and they're going to be very offended by that. That's the campaign.
And was it immediately like, oh my gosh, this is it?
Yes, it was immediately like, oh my God, this is the craziest, weirdest idea, but the scripts were freaking hilarious.
Oh, so who writes the scripts?
The creative team who did it wrote the scripts.
And they just nailed it.
They just nailed it. It was just hilarious.
And that lasted, it was iconic in its own right.
It turned into a TV show. Did you ever watch the Caveman TV show?
I think I may have watched the first episode.
It was awful. I mean, just awful. And I felt so bad because the guy who invented the caveman, who wrote all the scripts at Martin, was a guy named Joe Lawson. And he's an incredibly talented writer. And when the Caveman TV show came up, Joe said, all right, this is it. I'm moving to LA. And he quit Martin and he went to write for the Caveman TV show. And I think he had this very rude awakening of, oh my gosh, writing for TV in LA is very different from writing commercials in Richmond. But lucky for Joe and lucky for LA. He's still there, still writing, and is very successful because he's really, really good.
He's writing for sitcoms?
He's writing for sitcoms. I think he wrote for Modern Family for a while. He's written some stuff for Will Ferrell. He's very talented.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I keep saying the word fantastic. I don't know why I keep going back to that word, but I mean it sincerely.
Yeah, no, he's super talented and a really nice guy.
Yeah, I think the caveman idea works beautifully, obviously, for advertising for Geico. And I think it's a lot easier to be funny in a minute or 30-second spot. But even in sitcoms, you have to have storylines, 2 or 3 storylines working at any given point. And if they're really good, they persist beyond that one episode. Yeah. It's a very different notion than...
Yeah, the structure is different for sure. I think the business is different, and the way they treat writers is different, and the respect and care that they give to the craft of comedy is different. They exercise it differently in Hollywood than they do in an ad agency in Richmond. You know?
Have you ever experienced it firsthand?
Never, because I've never worked in movies.
Okay.
But I have heard secondhand from people who have that in an ad agency, the especially one like Martin that's driven so much by the creative work. The creative teams have a lot of authority. They can do a lot of things. And when push comes to shove, the creative department will make the decision because they're the ones who are most responsible for the quality of the work. And it's the quality of the work that defines the trajectory of the agency. So they're deferred to often. And I think that never happens in Hollywood. Writers are a dime a dozen, and if you don't like if I don't like what you're writing, you're gone. I'll get another one.
There are 500 folks behind you.
Yeah, that's right, and I think that's a big difference.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
Yeah, it's a bummer. It's a bummer, but I think the good ones, as in every profession, the good ones stick around and rise to the top, and that's why you have great shows like Modern Family.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I think in every endeavor, every industry that happens for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so at what point in your tenure with Martin did you think you had a chance of being the CEO?
I kind of fell in love with the place, and I fell in love with it not just as an ad agency. I fell in love with the community of the agency. The feel and the culture of the place was really special, and it was being surrounded by people who you genuinely liked and who you thought genuinely liked you, but pushing each other really hard to do the best work you could, and not sparing the horses when it came to pushing each other and saying, you know what, Paul, that's not good enough, and then fighting like cats and dogs over ideas and going across the street and having a beer. There was a lot of that, and that kind of atmosphere was just really cool. And the more I learned about it, the more I thought, I really want to be part of the leadership of this. I want to be involved in the decisions that are made, long-term decisions, strategic decisions that are made to make sure something like this keeps going, because it's really special and it's really cool and it's good for the people who come in contact with it. It's a positive influence in the world. So
it was less ladder climbing, or maybe no ladder climbing, more about I want to be the steward of keeping what we have going.
Yeah, it was both. I mean, there was some ambition there. I don't think I wouldn't deny that, but there was a lot of desire to be the steward of this. I felt really attached to it, and I really got committed to it. And I got to have a really close relationship with the guy who was the CEO at the time, who was my predecessor, who's a man named John Adams, who's one of the most talented, amazing, brilliant people I've ever met. And I got close with him, and he helped me through that process, and we decided I should go get an MBA. So I went and got an MBA, and kept working at it. And
were you being groomed effectively?
I think so, and I think I knew it at the time. At that point, I was or my early 30s, mid 30s.
That's young.
Yeah, and it's a young business, man. It's a young business, and it was going in that direction, and I kind of knew it. And I went and got an MBA at Kellogg, which was the best thing I could have done at the time.
It's a fantastic MBA program.
I loved it. And I went there thinking like it was going to give me some kind of weird secret language I could speak to my clients in, because they're all MBAs, and now I'm an MBA, and I can give them the secret handshake and say the right words and stuff. And it wasn't that at all. What it did was help me see my company as a company, not just as an ad agency. And it was a great preparation for management. And I think that's why the wise people who sent me there, that's why they sent me there. I didn't know it at the time, but that's why they sent me there.
Yeah, highly creative folks tend not to be great at running businesses.
No. And MBA programs will tend to train that out of you. They're all based on repeatable processes that have proven to work over time, that reduce the risk and make it not necessary that you be very creative. Just follow the template. Just follow the framework. It works. Which I think is actually a dangerous idea in today's business environment, because that's not what business is about anymore. It might have been 30 years ago. It's not now.
Repeatable is fine if you want to generate the same income or profit for a period of time, but eventually you become stagnant, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a recipe for incremental success, which is kind of going backwards these days. But I have a theory about business right now in creativity, which is that if you think back to the kind of the periods that define mankind, they're all defined by the thing that propelled us forward fastest, right? So we've got the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, which is when we learned to work with those things. You got the Information Age, which is when we learned how to process massive amounts of information. You got the Industrial Age, which is when we were able to harness mass production and efficiency and things like that. I think actually we're in a creative age now because all the information you could ever possibly want is right at your fingertips on your computer.
Right there.
There's no knowledge that you can't have access to. So knowledge isn't going to differentiate you from anybody else. Everybody knows everything. Access to natural resources, not really anymore. There's a more sophisticated supply chain around the world than there ever has been. You're going to be able to get things in a way that you never could before. COVID notwithstanding, of course. Right. So that's not the differentiator. Access to finances really isn't either. Money's moving faster and it's easier to get funding than it's ever been. So that's not the differentiator. Really, the question is, what can you do that's never been done with that which everyone has?
Yeah, it's a problem that the world's never tried to solve before.
It's creativity.
Yeah.
And that's what successful businesses have been. And they're the ones who completely rethink business models. It's what Airbnb does with lodging. It's what Tesla did with automobiles. It's what Uber and Lyft are doing with transportation, right? They're not leveraging any kind of asset that other people don't have access to. They're just completely rethinking existing categories.
And it takes guts to do that too.
A lot of guts. And a repeatable process and a framework is not going to get you there.
No.
You have to completely turn things upside down.
Not in a million years.
No. Creativity is what's going to get you
the
there.
Creativity age. Are we saying that you've come up with that?
Yes.
For the history books.
For the history books, right here and now.
Children decades and centuries from now.
That's right. We're in the creative age.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's, wow, you've given me a ton to think about.
Good.
Yeah, that's a great thing. It's absolutely a great thing. All right, so you become. How did you find out that you were actually named CEO in the moment? How did you find out?
So the moment was John, who was the CEO at the time, invited me for coffee, and I had come to him about a year earlier, and said, "Look, I just don't want I don't want there to be any doubt about this. I want this job. I really do." And he said, "All right, well, thanks for telling me. I'm glad you kind of came out and said it." Because I had been kind of beating around the bush, sort of, or kind of thinking like, okay, if I just do the right things, it'll come to me. And those kind of jobs don't come to you. You have to go get them.
You need to be intentional.
Right. You need to be intentional. You need to go get them. Right. So I went to him and I did that. And about a year and a half later, he called me for coffee one morning, just out of nowhere. He said, just come meet me at the coffee shop. And he sat me down and he said, well, I just want you to know that I'm going to name you my successor as CEO of the Martin Agency. And it was just sitting in the middle of this coffee shop.
And it's his call.
It's his call. He's already cleared it. He has to go through all the parent company stuff, and they have to vet me and do all the stuff that they do. And, because it's a publicly traded company, and, that's all important. This kind of succession planning is important. So he had done all that because John's a very intentional guy, and he plans all those things out. And he had done it, and he said, all right, you're going to be named the successor. Here's how it's going to work. It's going to happen in 12 months. And he laid out this whole kind of plan for how this is going to work. Here's what's going to happen between now. It was actually 24 months. 24 months from now, between now and then, you're going to be the general manager of the agency. And I thought, well, and I said to him, general manager, what the hell do you want me to do as general manager? What's that? And he's just said, go where you're needed. So it was really cool. I got to kind of troll around the agency and find problems to solve. So I ended up focusing on our digital capabilities and trying to make us better at digital because the big shift was going on between traditional media to digital media, and all these social media were coming up, and nobody knew what the hell was going on. So I tried to get us more into that age, and we hired a bunch of people and built some capabilities that we didn't have, and that was cool. And then 2 years after that, he called the agency together and we made the switch. And he handed me it's a tiki torch like you would get at Lowe's.
Okay.
That he had cut to be about 3 feet long and spray painted gold. So it's like this cheesy straw tiki torch.
It's a $4 tiki torch.
It's a $4 tiki torch that he spray painted in his garage gold. and he passed it to me in the staff meeting in front of the staff. I'm passing the tiki torch to you, which was pretty awesome. I still have it. It's on the shelf in my office.
I was going to say, that's fairly creative.
Oh yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah.
It was pretty great. So that's what happened, and we did that, and as these things sometimes happen, we did the big staff meeting, and that was announced. And right after that, he and I went into an interview with the Times-Dispatch, and did all that, and it was cool.
Yeah, that's really cool.
It was a really cool day.
How old were you?
I was 45.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah. Yeah. It was overwhelming. You think you're going to be prepared for something like that, and you're not.
You're now in charge of everything.
Yeah, and I didn't officially take the job of CEO until about 3 months after that. And he did that by design as well. So we're having lots of meetings to talk about how things are going and things like that. But I still didn't feel prepared. I remember the day that I was officially made CEO and I took the job. I remember walking through the hallway thinking, what the hell am I going to do now? What do I do? Like, how do I behave? And it's wild. It's a crazy experience, but it was amazing. It was amazing. It was the biggest, it's the greatest honor in my professional life. It's unbelievable.
How far into your tenure did you feel confident?
I don't know that I ever felt completely confident.
Wow.
It's a job that you learn every day, and it's everything that comes across your desk is gray. Everything is a judgment call. Everything is difficult. I remember President Obama once saying that, everything I deal with is difficult because if it was easy, it gets solved way before it gets to my office.
That's a fantastic way to think about it.
Yeah, and that's true of any CEO job, I think. So it's hard and it's demanding, and it took way more of my time than I expected to take, and it's consuming. And I didn't manage it very well for a couple of years. It took me a while to get used to the rhythm of the job.
Yeah, because there's no book that tells you how to be a CEO.
And it never stops. It just never stops. You have to love it because it will never stop. And it'll take whatever you give it,
Nights and weekends?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's never going to send you home early. It'll never tell you to take the weekend off. It'll never tell you to go to your kid's dance recital. You have to do that.
Yeah.
And I wasn't very good at that for the first couple of years. I didn't know how to turn it off. And it took its toll on me. It took its toll on my relationship with my kids. My wife is amazing. And I don't think she never let on that it was taking a toll on her, but I know it was. I did have that moment as CEO where my kid was my oldest son was at a Cub Scout camp. And it was one of those den meetings, right? And I was picking him up and we were walking out. And the weekend prior to that, the den had gone on a father-son camping trip that I couldn't go on because I had to work. And
you're the CEO.
Yeah. Oh man! So we're walking out. We're walking out through the parking lot, and he looks at me. He goes, "Hey, Dad." I'm like, "Yeah, buddy. I hate your job." I was like, "Oh my God!" Knife to the heart. Total knife to the heart.
How old was your son at the time?
He was like 10 or 11.
Yeah.
I hate your job.
Love you, Dad.
Oh my God! It was totally non-judgmental. I mean, it's very judgmental, but there was absence of malice. He just said it. I hate your job.
From the mouths of babes.
And then just kept walking. I was like, oh my God, I got to get this under control.
And you did. It sounds like you did.
As best I could.
Yeah.
As best I could. I'm not sure I ever got really good at handling the demands of the job, but man. You got to make choices. This is the lesson to me is that you can rise as high as you want, but if it burns your personal life, who freaking cares?
Yeah, who cares?
Who cares? Yeah. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
And I know so many people who rose to these, the highest heights of corporate America and leadership positions, and they're making more money than God, and they're sitting in big crystal palaces in New York, and they're miserable.
They're miserable, and their kids don't talk to them.
Their kids don't talk to them. They're on their third marriage. If they're married at all, if they're connected to a significant other at all, and they go back to their big, fancy apartment in Park Avenue and, turn the lights off and go to sleep. Yeah. And it's like it's miserable. It's miserable.
Let's go with something super positive.
Yeah.
Fondest memory being the CEO.
Fondest memory of being the CEO. What was it? Martin is one of the most creatively recognized agencies in the world, actually. And there's a festival in Cannes, France, called the Cannes Festival of Creativity.
They're more known for their movie.
Exactly,
festival.
but this is similar to that. It happens a month or so after the film festival. But it's the biggest advertising creative recognition in the world. And there was one year where we just tonned it at Cannes. We won so many awards because the work was so good. And being there, representing the Martin Agency with the creative teams, being recognized by the preeminent creative awards show in the world was an amazing moment, an amazing moment. So that was proud. That's a kind of it's not functional. I guess it's functional to the extent that it's about the product of the agency, and I was very proud of that as the product of the agency. The pride was more consistent in those moments when I was in Richmond and people would say, well, hey, what do you do? And I would say, I work at the Martin Agency. And they go, oh, that's amazing. Wow, that's so cool. What do you do? And the moment they say, what do you do there? And I was able to say, I'm the CEO. Those were amazing moments for me because I was saying it out loud. And those moments were just as proud as the moments at Cannes. Because I felt like I could say it. This is what I do. And it's really cool.
It probably wasn't cool the first few times. It was probably really, really weird the first few times.
It's weird, but it's weird in a great way. It was weird in a great way because I'm so proud of the place. And I'm so proud to be connected with it. And that happened over and over again. And every one of those moments was proud for me.
That's cool. All right, taking another turn here.
Yeah.
Your time ended at Martin.
Yeah, it was hard. The ending was difficult.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So we, the agency was run by 3 people: CEO, which is me, and a chief operating officer and a chief creative officer. And we were the 3 managing partners of the agency. And one day we got a report that our chief creative officer had been accused of some sexual harassment behavior. And we looked into that and realized that he was going to have to leave the company. And that happened. And because the person who had lodged the complaint she was scared. And she had come to us and said, please make sure that no one knows that this was me. I don't want my name associated with this. I don't want to be public about this. And we promised her we would do that. And because of that, we were not able to give the people at the company who were completely, taken aback by this whole thing, because this was right on the heels of everything that happened with Matt Lauer at NBC. It was when the Me Too movement was at its absolute height. And we were the first advertising agency to go through this. We wouldn't be the last, but we were the first to go through it on a national scale. And it was hard. So, but we promised that we would protect this woman's anonymity. And because of that, we weren't able to give the staff much information about what happened. We weren't even really able to say it was sexual harassment. So we kind of had to dance around it. The reason for that was not because we wanted to keep them in the dark. It was because we knew any detail we gave about what happened would point directly to her. It was unavoidable. And we had promised her we wouldn't do that. So that frustrated some people at Martin for understandable reasons. It felt like we were not being transparent. It felt like we were protecting him rather than protecting the company. And people got very upset about it. And a couple of people ended up talking to the Wall Street Journal about it. They wrote a big article. And I knew at that moment that, all right, this wasn't probably not going to end well for me, because the CEO doesn't survive these kind of things. And at that moment, you have to ask yourself, while the company is going through this awful moment, what's important to you? And there were really only 2 things that were important to me. One was we had to protect her because we promised we would. So protect her at all costs and do whatever it takes to make sure the company can get through this, because these kind of things destroy companies, right?
Yeah.
And client relationships and trust, the whole thing could fall apart, right? And I was damn sure not going to let that happen.
Because you were one of the stewards.
Yeah, I wasn't going to. I couldn't let that happen. So, I ended up getting fired, along with the COO, and we remember sitting down with the head of the holding company and saying, well, what could we have done better? What could we have done different? And he, to his credit, said, there's nothing you could have done. I have no choice. And you know what? Good for you for being honest. I understand that. That's what comes with the responsibility of sitting in this chair. You got to own these things. Even though you didn't perpetrate the behavior, you have to be responsible for this. So we were able to keep the company on a sound enough footing that it could go forward, and it is now incredibly successful because the leadership team at Martin is phenomenal.
To include you back then,
I stayed around long enough to make the transition and to work with the incoming leadership to make sure that the agency knew that we were in this together, and that the holding company, to their credit, kept me around for another 3 or 4 months to help with whatever transition had to happen. But the person who took my job is a woman named Kristen Cavallo, and she's brilliant, and she's doing an unbelievable job at Martin. They got exactly the right person to take that job at exactly the right time, and the agency is hugely successful right now. And the person who lodged the complaint was safe. She was protected.
And you lived up to your word.
And to this day, I think she still works there. And that's great. So the two things that had to happen happened.
It sounds like you have no regrets.
I have no regrets. I think there are things in moments like that you could have done better. We weren't perfect. I think we did more things right than we did wrong in that situation. You're never going to get it all right because it's so tumultuous and so stressful. But yeah, I'll tell you what, if we had not focused on protecting her and putting the agency on the right footing for its future, I'd have thousands of regrets. But
it would have fallen apart.
But
probably.
we did the right. We focused on the right things, and those things happened. And I'm happy about that. I'm proud of that.
You had a steward mindset pretty early on at Martin, and it sounds like you carried it through.
Yeah, I tried to. Thank you. I'm glad. I tried to. I didn't do everything right. Nobody ever does.
No, you're human.
But yeah, so it was hard, man. You never want to leave the company you spent more than half your life working at. The way I left Martin, it was
half
really
of your
hard.
life, not half of your adult life, not half of your career, but basically half of your life at that point.
I was 50 years old when I left, and I had worked there for 26 years. I'd never done anything as long as I was a person working at the Martin agency. Nothing. I'd never lived in the same city. I had never been married that long. I'd never done anything for as long as I had worked at the Martin agency.
Were you scared to the point that you were witless, or was it pretty slow, the process, and you kind of got back on your feet pretty quickly?
I wasn't scared. I was disoriented. Mm-hmm. It's like the world is a little off its axis. Like the things that you had always counted on were not there anymore. You're not going into that place and working at that place, and you're not with those people anymore. And that's a really weird, disorienting feeling. And it took me a couple of months to get over how disorienting that was. I kept working and doing things, so I was taking on some consulting jobs and doing some of that, and doing some work at William and Mary pretty quickly after I left Martin, because I couldn't sit still for that long. But it felt, even while I was doing those things, it felt disorienting. It felt like I'm not used to this. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing.
You never had.
How does this work?
that disorienting feeling, nothing like that had happened to you in your life.
Never. And I think that's the biggest and honestly best lesson for me from that, which is that you can live this charmed life, this privileged life that I lived for 50 years. I had an unbelievable family. My parents, both of whom are still alive, been married for almost 60 years. They have an amazing relationship. My relationship with my wife is great. My kids are amazing. My family's great. My career was a blast, rocket ride to the top of this company that I loved. And then, boom, your charmed life is over.
Or so it seemed.
Well, I don't mean your life is over. The charmed part is over. And
there's a break in the charm.
Even you can hit the rocks. And you just hit the rocks, buddy. And this is what it feels like. So here we go, And there's something very humbling and humanizing about that, where you start to feel like maybe you're just one of the lucky ones that's never going to happen to. And then it happens and you think, oh, shit. Okay. I need to pull it together here. And it was a challenge. It was hard, but it was good.
I was going to say, looking back at it, I imagine there were a lot of good aspects.
It makes you realize some things. It taught me some lessons. One of which was, as much as I loved that place, I invested too much of my identity in it, and that's not healthy. You should never do that. You should work at a place you love with people you love and that you care about, but you should never let it become your identity and who you are, because it's not who you are. You're something else.
Yeah.
Because if you let it become too much of your identity, the feeling of discomfort and disorientation that happens when that eventually goes away, which it will, by the way,
always,
can be overwhelming. And it was overwhelming for me for a little while.
But you're in a good place now.
I'm in a great place now. I love what I'm doing. I'm working with amazing people in a consulting firm that's doing great. We're doing awesome work with really interesting clients, and I'm teaching at William and Mary, and I couldn't be happier.
What are you teaching?
I'm teaching marketing. I'm on the marketing faculty.
And you're teaching kids as part of is it a part-time, or are these full-time students?
They're full-time MBAs.
Oh, these are MBAs.
I'm teaching in two programs. One's the full-time MBA program, and then I helped develop and am now the faculty director of the online masters in marketing there, which is really cool. So when I got hired there, the dean sat me down and he was like, I want you to design the master's program that you would have hired from at Martin. And I thought, that's really a cool brief. I can do that. So we put together these classes that we all created from scratch that are focused on the mix of business analytics and creativity. So there's a left brain, right brain kind of balance in this program that's really interesting.
It sounds like you're having a blast.
I love it. It's really, really fun. Academia it's a whole different kettle of fish from corporate America. But
and this is coming from the 1.6 GPA at some point.
Oh, totally. They clearly never check my transcript. So if I get fired from my job, because I said it on this podcast.
I don't know of any William and Mary associated people that listen to this.
I don't know. If you are, don't look at my transcript.
I think you're probably pretty safe given your track record.
I don't know. We'll see. I hope so. But yeah, so they didn't look at my transcript clearly, but I loved it. I loved building it. There's something about the academic environment that is a combination, especially at William & Mary, of really engaging, smart students who really want to learn. I mean, they are really paying attention. They are there to learn. That's their job. And they're very serious about it. But you're also in an environment that thrives on open exchange and development of ideas. That's what academia is about. So when you're in the business world, so much of it comes down to execution. We have to get this stuff done. When you're a professor, your execution is teaching the concepts, right?
Right.
It's not running a company. It's a different thing. So you're much more oriented toward the ideas and the concepts that you're developing. And I like that. I like that at this point in my life. It's really interesting.
That's great. All right, two last things.
Yeah.
I don't know that we asked Boomer this question. We may not have been asking this particular question when we recorded with him. And actually, this is my co-host. I have an occasional co-host that joins me maybe a third of the time. It's usually athletes he likes to join for. Anyway, the question is, you get to be a talk show host.
Yep.
One time only. It's only 1 hour. You get to have a male guest, a female guest, a musical group, or a solo musical performer. If you love comedy, you can also throw in a comedian.
Uh-huh.
These folks can be alive or dead.
Okay.
They can be famous or not famous. They can be close to you or strangers to you. It literally anyone who's ever lived that fits those four descriptions.
Wow. Okay. Give me the categories again.
Male.
Yep.
Female. Mm-hmm. Music. Comedy.
Male, female, music, comedy. Okay. The male is Jesus.
Okay. I think he's our most popular answer.
Everybody wants to say, all right, what's the deal, man?
Right.
Is this a real thing, or are you just full of it? What's up?
Yeah.
So yes, I would want to talk to him. Female, female. For some reason, I want to talk to Amelia Earhart.
Okay. What happened? I want to know what happened.
But also, like, there's so much behind her story that is about pioneering this male field as a woman in the 40s or 50s, you know?
Yeah.
How did you do this? Like, what is it about you that made you able to do this? You know? And then, of course, what happened?
Yeah.
You know? Okay, male, female, and then music and comedy. Music. Beethoven.
Okay.
How the hell do you write that music when you're going deaf?
Going deaf.
And deaf.
Yeah, prolific doesn't even begin to describe what he accomplished.
No, like, how do you do that? What's in your mind? What are you envisioning when you can't hear the music to enable you to write that music? What's going on in your mind while you're doing that?
He had to be. Yeah, there's no one else in human history that accomplished that.
Yeah, I think there's something about it that speaks to the wondrous power of the human mind. Like, how is the human mind able to conjure that?
Do you think the human mind conjured it, or he was born with it and he just tapped into it as he was losing his hearing?
Yeah. I don't know.
You would find out on the talk show.
I don't think you don't learn that. He was somehow born with it, but I'd like to have him talk about it.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on in his experience or in his mind that allows him to do that? Because I don't understand it. Comedy.
You don't have to have a comedian if you're not really into.
Oh no, I like comedy. Lenny Bruce.
Oh, the original guy that turned it in the direction it's traveling now, right?
Yeah, and you know the stuff he went through to do it, and man, the forces he pushed against.
I think we're gonna need 2 hours for your show,
dude. Oh, just talking about Lenny Bruce, we could do that for 2 hours.
Yeah,
but yeah, the forces he pushed against, the kind of determination, the commitment to that as art and subversion.
Yeah,
you know? I mean, that would be amazing.
He was the first clearly subversive comedian.
Yes.
He
willfully so.
He opened the door for George Carlin, Richard Pryor. Yeah.
All of them. I mean, willfully so. He paved the way for all those people and made it okay for them to do it.
I think you just gave the most 4 powerful answers I may have ever heard.
Well, thanks.
They're all historical.
Yeah.
But they all have incredible things to share that I think anybody that knows part of their stories would love to hear the answers to.
Yeah, good. Well, thanks.
Yeah.
That would be fun. I'd tune into that show.
I would absolutely tune into that show. Maybe the first question is, how did you get these 4 people that aren't living anymore?
That'd be the thing. Yeah, I want to talk to the booker because whoever they are has got it going. You need them.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, last topic. Just tell us about your family, your immediate family.
Oh, my family. I am married. I have 2 sons. My wife, Betsy, and I have been married since 1994. And she is the kindest, most caring, amazingly selfless person I've ever met. And everybody who meets her loves her. And everybody who knows me as Betsy's husband. Oh, you're Betsy's husband. Yes, I am.
It's a compliment.
She is phenomenal. She is phenomenal. I have my oldest son is Patrick. He's 25, and he's a musician. And he just got off the road from touring with his band, House and Home. Check them out.
Okay.
They're on Spotify and Apple Music and all the usual music channels. They're awesome.
House and Home.
House and Home.
Okay.
Yeah, they're I guess indie punk is what he would call it. Don't call it pop punk because he'll smack you in the face.
I don't know the difference.
I'm not sure I do either. But they're awesome. So he's doing that. He's happy. He's brilliant, smart, awesome guy. And then my other equally brilliant, smart, and awesome son is Ethan, who's 22. And this coming weekend is graduating from Emerson College in Boston with an acting degree. And he's going to hang out in Boston, I think, and see if he can't find a couple of parts to play over the summer and try to make it as an actor. I think he envisions himself eventually going to New York. He's really into the stage and drama. And he lives artistically on 2 poles. One is Shakespeare, and the other is this like really subversive, weird avant-garde theater. He likes those 2 ends of the spectrum.
Wow.
Yeah, he's terrific. He's really talented and really good. So who knows? You know, I'm biased, but hopefully at the end of the day, I've got a rock star and a star of stage and screen on my hands.
Yeah, Boston has really become an epicenter the last 2 or 3 decades for acting, or maybe it's been longer than that.
Yeah, he loves it up there. I'm not sure he thought he would when he moved up there to go to school. Emerson has a great acting program, and that's why he went there. But he fell in love with Boston. I think if he can stay, he will.
Yeah, Boston's a neat town.
Yeah. He's decided he's not quite ready for New York, whatever ready for New York means.
It's a lot.
It's a lot to take. It's
a
lot. But man, he's good. So he could get it done.
Awesome. Well, Matt, I really appreciate you doing this.
Oh man, it's been so much fun. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely enjoyed learning a lot more about you. So
the time has flown.
Yeah, it's an hour and 24 minutes, a little longer than I think I said.
Oof. Apologies to everybody out there who listened to it. Thanks for sticking around.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd also really appreciate if you'd rate and review us. You can find us at scodupodcast.com.